Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Kim Miller begins now.
Good evening. First tonight, Ashley detainees say they're, quote, being left to feel like dogs as they brave repeated lockdowns. That's according to the Children's Commissioner, who claims long-term recruitment problems are continuing to plague the centre and putting staff's safety at risk.
Ashley Youth Detention Centre under the microscope once again, short staffing seeing the use of restrictive practices, also known as lockdowns.
Young people describe being locked in their room to me as being like a dog in the dog's home, where you are scratching at your door.
The Children's Commissioner losing patience with the short staffing issues. Aggressive recruitment rounds haven't solved the problem.
It is simply intolerable that for a year, for more than a year, we have had this situation where we are satisfied that locking young people in their room is an acceptable solution.
ACSU, the union representing workers, says some days detainees aren't allowed to leave their rooms at all, also claiming there's been a recent spate of serious assaults. Last month, the fire service was called to extinguish a blaze at the centre.
This is on Minister Yench, who in every one of his portfolios just dithers. And while he dithers, those young people in Ashley are suffering, and more are going into that house of horrors.
The Education, Children and Youth Minister said in a statement, recruitment and retention in frontline youth work remains a challenge, and the government's delivering new training as well as investment in surveillance equipment.
Of course, we want to support young people on their journey and also support our workforce there.
It comes as work towards closing Ashley and launching a new youth justice model continues. The transition was promised by the end of next year, but the Minister has admitted that timeline is unlikely. Josh Duggan, 7 Tasmania News.
One of Tasmania's most prominent developers says he'll have to shelve tens of millions of dollars of investment if an AFL team and stadium don't go ahead. In an exclusive interview, Errol Stewart says potential projects across the state would dry up if Team Tasmania gets the thumbs down.
A wall of potential projects symbolises what's at stake for Errol Stewart.
We've got to get on board because this is the best thing that's happened to Tassie in a long time.
From wharves to hotels, the developer has around $100 million worth of investment in the pipeline, but most of that will collapse if the AFL team and stadium plans fall over.
It's just really important that we really consider the benefits down the stream.
Despite Errol Stewart's considerable portfolio, he considers himself something of a small fish in the development game. But in his eyes, that's where the opportunity for Tasmania really lies.
If it goes, I can go to other investors and say, hey, let's build a hotel in Hobart, let's build one in Burnie, or let's build one in Launceston, or wherever it might be, and I can get some other capital in if they know that this thing is a goer.
Although there's contention around building a new stadium in the heart of Hobart, Mr Stewart backs the idea, saying lessons can be learnt from another expansion team.
I did a fair bit of work looking at the Gold Coast and where they made some errors, and clearly one of the problems that they have is that their stadium's too far out, they don't have good public transport and they don't have good parking. Exactly the same with Bellerive.
Mr Stewart has pushed the Tasmanian AFL team's case for years, being among a handful of influential figures chosen for a special task force when the movement was getting off the ground. Now he's looking to put his personal faith in the team's footprint.
So let's unite and get it going.
Tom Johnson, 7 Tasmania News.
The Deputy Premier has moved to allay fears of an early election. Despite rumours of dissatisfaction within government ranks, he says it will see out the final 2 years of this term.
The only people talking about elections are politicians and journalists. Tasmanians don't want to have another election. The business community don't want to have another election.
He also said the government intends to debate electoral disclosure laws in the upper house during Parliament's spring session. A bleak start to the day weather-wise in Launceston, with thick fog blanketing the city this morning. The heavy haze causing delays for both inbound and departing passengers at the airport, with flights to and from Melbourne and Sydney impacted.
We take fog delays very seriously here at Launceston Airport. However, the safety of our passengers on aircraft is the utmost of importance.
Motorists were also urged to drive with caution, with fog lingering for much of the morning. With school holidays just around the corner, Tasmania's attractions are preparing for an influx of travellers. Northern Tasmania is leading the off-season tourism charge as other parts of the state see visitor figures cool.
Reopening just in time for school holidays, Launceston Entertainment Complex is bouncing back after a big move.
My favourite thing to do here was bouncing on the trampolines and doing forward rolls.
As wintry weather takes hold, the indoor play centre is seeing a school holiday influx.
People are really joyous that we're open and loving the new space.
After a record tourism run, Tasmania's accommodation sector is cooling off. Across the state, just under 2/3 of hotel rooms were booked out in May.
Our occupancy stats for May showed that we're starting to slow down around the state, and we're probably not surprised about that given the highs we've come off the back of COVID.
But Launceston appears to be beating the chill. Occupancy rates in the north were over 70% in May. And the airport is preparing for one of its busiest periods in more than 3 years.
This school holiday period, we're looking to invite 67,000 people through our airport, which is super exciting.
Those numbers are on par with pre-pandemic figures, and Launceston Entertainment Complex is already seeing tourists tumble in.
It's school holidays around Australia in other spaces, so we've been able to see that.
But the Tasmanian Hospitality Association says when it comes to tourism, we can't become complacent.
We've got to do a lot more work in the winter period to make sure we keep our occupancy stats at a good number for our venues.
Annie Green, 7 Tasmania News.
A local radio star is using her platform to normalise mental health discussions and show people it's okay not to be okay. Esther Woody-Nichols has been appointed Tasmania's second Lifeline ambassador, the Triple M host using her own struggles as a driving force to help others in their times of need.
It was Lifeline that I reached out to on multiple occasions over multiple years, and without them, I don't know where I'd be.
The work of an ambassador and spreading the mental health message is small and delicate at first, but you really hope that it can grow to something that nourishes communities and even generations.
It's a timely move, with Lifeline Tasmania taking one call every 30 seconds. Tasmanian streets may be getting a little quieter, with a ban proposed on petrol-powered bicycles. The state government's deemed them a public nuisance and unsafe, saying they've led to multiple crashes.
They've been added to with an aftermarket dodgy two-stroke engine. They can go very fast. Their brakes and the frame are simply not built to be able to slow down or even to sustain an obstacle or a crash.
The laws are expected to be debated during Parliament's spring sitting. A local trust has cut the ribbon on another affordable home designed for vulnerable Tasmanians. The 2-bedroom unit was the last to be built under a federal government grant, with the future of increased supply now hanging by a thread.
8 years ago, Bob Gordon set out to develop more accessible homes for people living with disabilities. 27 units and 54 residents later, Bob has changed the face of social housing.
There's a lot of people in our society who are the most vulnerable, who have the quietest voices about getting things done for themselves.
Bob inspired Tasmania's supported Affordable Accommodation Trust, this new Norfolk home, the latest addition.
We could probably build another 300 houses in a year and we still wouldn't meet the demand.
However, there's concerns increased supply won't come to fruition, with the $6 million federal grant used to fund the dwellings now run dry.
The next house that we're building is in Burnie, and it's been funded by borrowings against these current houses, which is what we wanted to do. It's costing us a lot more.
Their hopes for a lifeline are pinned on the Albanese government's Housing Australia Future Fund, which, if passed through the Senate, would see $500 million injected into social accommodation across the country each year.
What we've heard from the community housing providers is that they would estimate between 8,000 and 12,000 properties would be being built if that fund had got through and was operational from the 1st of July.
Vulnerable Tasmanians left to suffer while their elected representatives play politics. Brianna Boylan, 7 Tasmania News.
A Tasmanian business owner says a government power bill concession isn't enough to cover rising prices. Jo Walsh from Launceston's grain grocer says she's also seen her customers' shopping habits change as the cost of living rises.
And to hear those quiet conversations between their partners, can they afford those extra oats? Can they afford that little bit extra of their pasta? Is something so basic, is heartbreaking.
The government says it's already contributed more than $300 million in concessions, and more needs to be done by the federal government to ease interest rate pressure. Tasmanian borders will soon have added protection with a new round of four-legged recruits joining the pack at Launceston Airport. The next generation of detector dogs paving the way to allow for the retirement of loyal beagles.
More noses on the ground, 14 precious pups enlisted to keep Tasmania safe.
With increasing domestic threats, biosecurity threats, and also increasing international threats like foot and mouth disease and those types of issues, the dogs at our border are absolutely crucial.
The fresh faces being put through their paces as part of the state government's new biosecurity detector dog plan.
We know how important that is to us here in Tasmania, to our agricultural industry, to our seafood sector and indeed to our environment.
The next breed of frontline hounds featuring a contemporary lineup.
We have Labradors, German Short-Haired Pointers, Springer Spaniels and Cocker Spaniels. The size difference is the biggest difference, so we can now diversify.
Making way for their predecessors to enjoy a new lease on life.
As the new ones come in, we're phasing out and retiring our older beagle fleet that most people are probably familiar with. Unfortunately, the time has come for them to retire, and we're using our best endeavours to make sure that they can have the best retirements possible.
They've been going to swimming lessons, they've been going out to schools, visiting different places.
It might be out with the old and in with the new, but passengers are reminded to resist the urge to pat.
It decreases the chance the dog will make a detection if you put your hand in their face, and we do ask the public not to interact with the dogs.
Ready to serve and protect, one sniff at a time. Victoria Easto, 7 Tasmania News.
A Tasmanian private school has raised the Aboriginal flag for the first time. Launceston Grammar School marking NAIDOC Week with students taking part in a smoking and ochre ceremony, recognising this year's theme for our elders.
I'm hoping that they'll remember this day for the rest of their days. To see the flags go up together shows that, that being together is very significant.
It's really important that we recognise that our First Peoples have a place here and have a contribution to make to us.
The flag will be raised each school day.
To the TSL, and finals have come early for North Hobart, according to coach Adam Bester. The D's face Clarence this weekend, and a win against Clarence could see them jump into the top 4.
We'll have to bring the pressure and obviously give our forwards a real good look at it and manage to keep it in and hit the scoreboard.
Lauderdale sits just outside finals 2. They have a chance to record a first TSL win in Launceston.
We've gone up there a couple of times and been absolutely belted. They defend their home ground pretty well.
North Launceston host Glenorchy in the remaining game of round 13. Clarence coach Peter Ryan has been banned from this week's game by the tribunal for abusing an umpire. The charge was downgraded from 2 games to 1 after an early guilty plea. Clarence's runner Nick Payne has also been banned for a match for bad language. Tasmania's under-16 boys have gone down to GWS by 15 points at the National Championships. The Devils held a narrow lead at the final change, and a great piece of play saw Clarence's Brodie Speed weave around the Giants to give Penguins' Carmichael Peters-Chapman a shot at goal, keeping the side in the contest. The Giants pulled away though to record a 66-51 win. Tasmania had just 1 win from its 3 games, the victory coming against the Northern Territory. Tim David says he has finals on his mind after locking in a 1-year extension with the Hobart Hurricanes. With a year to run on his existing contract, it means the 27-year-old will stay in purple until at least 2025. David has become well known for his big hitting since joining the side in 2020. Before returning to Tassie, he's playing in cricket's wilderness, the United States, in the very first Major League Cricket competition with New York. Matthew Wade's also there, playing for the San Francisco Unicorns. And Launceston has lost one of its Big Bash matches for the upcoming season. Only one Hurricanes game will be played in the north, which will be the Canes' opening contest on Monday, December 11, under lights against the Sydney Sixers. 4 games will be played at Launceston Arena, including a twilight match on New Year's Day. Burnie basketballer Trey Armstrong will take time away from the Jack Jumpers. The 23-year-old asked to be released from his development player contract, saying he needs some time away from the game.
Trey's been considering his playing future and what he wants to do over the next few months, and unfortunately feels a bit burnt out with basketball at the moment, so he's decided to take a step away from the game.
Armstrong will see out the NBL 1 season with the Northwest Thunder, which is playing its final home game of the season tomorrow night in Ulverston. The Jack Jumpers are now looking for a new player to fill the void. And Tasmania's under-18 hockey stars have now won 5 from 5 at the Nationals in Hobart. Oscar Sproul opened the score in this afternoon for Tassie against the Victorian side before Max Johnston and Ruben Hoey added 2 more for a 3-1 win. The boys will play in the semi-final this weekend. The girls' side lost today and is out of the tournament.
Hobart, Launceston, Devonport and Burnie all sharing 14 degrees today. St Helens and Friendly Beaches, the state's top with 16, 15 degrees on the islands, and Strawn, Smithton, Lowhead and Marai Island all 14, Grove 10, Ooze 8 and Lyweenie 7 degrees. We woke to areas of fog at first, then cloud increased throughout the day, particularly about the north. Broad areas of cloud over eastern Australia. There is also cloud covering southern western WA and southern SA. Central Australia is mostly clear. A trough moves over Tasmania early tomorrow morning. A cold front crosses South Australia later in the day, and a weak ridge of high pressure persists over Central Australia. Tomorrow, west to northwesterly winds 15 to 25 knots, though 10 to 15 knots in the southeast during the morning. Winds increasing to 20 to 30 knots about the north during the afternoon, then about the west during the evening. Also reaching up to 35 knots about the northwest, and west-south can expect northwesterly swells up to 3 metres. A gale warning is in place for the far northwest coast, and a strong wind warning has also been issued for the central north coast, Banks Strait and Franklin Sound, east of Flinders Island, southwest coast and the central west coast. Tomorrow, Hobart and Campania partly cloudy with 14, a shower or 2 for Huonville. Launceston and Devonport showers and 14, showers also for Georgetown. Showers continue in the west, Burnie, Strawn and Wynyard all 13. To the east, St Helens and Swansea 15, partly cloudy and 13 for Port Arthur. And to the 3-day forecast, Saturday showers easing in the east with evening possible thunderstorms and hail about the West and Bass Strait Islands. Snow falling to 800 metres. Sunday showers about the West, South and Bass Strait Islands, mainly fine elsewhere. Snow falling to 800 metres and also small hail about the West and far south. Monday showers about the West and Bass Strait Islands extending to the north during the day with possible showers elsewhere. Taking a look at the mainland tomorrow, Broome and Alice Springs can expect sunshine. 11's the top for Canberra, increasing showers in Adelaide. And currently, Hobart mostly cloudy, 11 degrees, also cloudy in Launceston and in Devonport. The bearer of bad news yet again on the weekend forecast, Kim.
And that is all your news for now. We'll have news breaks throughout the evening, but for now, it's good night.